Okay, they're doing a countdown from 10.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone on the line. I'm Hannah Vaughan-Jones. I'm a British broadcaster and journalist and your host for today's event. So on behalf of the World Health Organization, supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies, I'm really proud to welcome you all to the global launch of the WHO report on the global tobacco epidemic 2021. Some housekeeping for the Zoom viewers to start things off. The event is translated in Arabic, Chinese, French, Spanish, and Russian, so please select your preferred language at the bottom of the screen. Everyone except for the panelists is muted. I hope you understand that. And at the bottom of the screen, you will find a Q&A box. Now, we are going to be very tight for time, but I do urge you to use that, and I will try and get any questions to our panelists as the session continues. And if we don't have time for them, then at least the team will be able to see it and hopefully respond in due course. So we have an exciting agenda ahead of us, starting off with welcome remarks from Dr. Tedros, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Mike Bloomberg, WHO Global Ambassador for Non-Communicable Diseases and Injuries, and of course, founder of Bloomberg Philanthropies, and Dr. Adriana Blanco Marquizo, head of the Secretariat of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. We'll also be given a presentation of the data from the report and have a discussion with different people sharing their experiences of tobacco control as well. And finally, we're going to be joined by the world-renowned marathon runner Paula Radcliffe, which I can't wait for as well. So with that, welcome to our first three speakers.
Dear colleagues and friends, the 8th edition of the WHO report on the global tobacco epidemic shows that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, countries all over the world have continued their tobacco control efforts. I take this opportunity to congratulate them and to thank them for their dedication. In 2008, WHO launched the MPOWER technical package of measures to help countries implement the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. At that time, 1 billion people were covered by one of these MPOWER measures. The report launched today shows that this number has more than quadrupled to 5.3 billion people. This is very encouraging progress, but tobacco still kills more than 8 million people every year. Newer products like e-cigarettes pose a new danger, marketed with flavors to appeal to children and adolescents. These products should be regulated to protect public health. WHO is committed to working with you for a tobacco-free world. I thank you.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to the WHO on the new MPOWER report. Bloomberg Philanthropies has worked closely with the WHO to fight tobacco since 2008, and we've seen extraordinary progress. Just to give a few examples, in 2008, 1 billion people were covered by at least one MPOWER measure. Today, 5.3 billion people are. Over half the world is now covered by at least 2 MPOWER measures. In 2007, just 6% of the people were. Last year, we took more important steps forward, despite the challenges of the pandemic. But at the same time, new products like flavored e-cigarettes pose major threats, especially to young people. Tobacco companies are promoting them as safe alternatives to cigarettes and other tobacco products. It's another dangerous chapter in the industry's history of deception. If we don't act, another generation of kids could get addicted to nicotine, and we can't let that happen. Some countries are already taking action, and by highlighting their efforts, this report will help others join them. Together we can keep making progress and save many more lives. Thanks for all your great work and all the best.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of the Secretariat of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, or the WHO FCTC as we call it, and the Protocol to Eliminate Illicit Trade in Tobacco Products, I want to warmly congratulate the World Health Organization and welcome its publication of the report on the Global Tobacco Epidemic 2021, the 8th in a series. The world is experiencing one of the worst health emergencies in recent times, the COVID-19 pandemic. However, despite the pandemic, it is encouraging to see that countries have to remain steadfast in their efforts to protect people from the harms of tobacco, reflecting, no doubt, its critical importance to public health. The data provided in this report demonstrates some good news. A growing percentage of the world's population is now covered by at least one or two fully implemented WHO FCTC measures, and in 2021, the WHO FCTC increases its number of parties to 182 and the protocol to 63. Unfortunately, the endless interference of the tobacco industry has also grown, even during the pandemic, with the industry's so-called corporate social responsibility efforts. While the advances detailed in the report are encouraging, there is a need to accelerate implementation of the convention and its protocol. Furthermore, as this most recent report shows, new challenges lie ahead. Electronic nicotine delivery systems, also known as e-cigarettes, and novel tobacco products are promoted as healthier alternatives to smoking by their manufacturers, and for many of these products is the same tobacco industry that is producing them, and by their supporters. But until independent research shows the real risk profile of these products, governments should be cautious. Science-based evidence, not marketing, should guide their actions. I call on governments that are parties to the WHO FCTC and its protocol to pull together in the efforts to strengthen implementation of these public health treaties and to build a new future for the population, where not only COVID-19 has been defeated, but also the harms caused by tobacco use. There has never been a more pressing time to support population in quitting tobacco use and to raise taxes on tobacco products, not only to curb tobacco consumption, but also to raise much needed revenues to fund pandemic recovery efforts. Thank you.
And my thanks to Tedros, to Mike, and also to Adriana as well. Now, we all know that tobacco control is very important. It's a very important public health topic. Most of us probably know someone who smokes or indeed uses e-cigarettes, so it affects and concerns us all. But let's start with a quick video compilation featuring the main messages of this new report.
Every year, tobacco kills more than 8 million people, including 1 million non-smokers who die from second-hand smoke. To protect the health of current and future generations, the World Health Assembly adopted the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control in 2003. And to help countries implement the provisions of the convention, WHO introduced MPOWER in 2008, focusing on the following measures: monitoring tobacco use and prevention policies, protecting people from tobacco smoke, offering help to quit tobacco use, warning about the dangers of tobacco, enforcing bans on tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship, and raising taxes on tobacco. WHO's latest report on the global tobacco epidemic shows that countries have continued to make progress, despite the challenges of COVID-19. More than half of all countries apply graphic warnings on tobacco packaging, while a third have comprehensive smoke-free legislation and tobacco advertising bans. 1 in 5 countries is protected by sufficiently high tobacco taxes, and 2 billion more people can access toll-free quitline services, while many others have access to online quitting tools. All of these measures are making a difference. The percentage of adults worldwide who smoke has already fallen from 23% in 2007 to 18% in 2019. If progress continues in all countries, smoking will decline even further. But we cannot ignore looming threats posed by newer products, such as electronic nicotine delivery systems, also known as ENDS, in cigarettes. ENDS are growing the industry's customer base, using deceptive marketing tactics, including multiple flavors and product designs, to deliberately attract children and adolescents. Children who use ENDS are 2 to 3 times more likely to use tobacco later in life. And yet, too many countries still have legislation too weak to address this global threat, while others have no laws in place at all. To build healthier societies and protect more lives, we must step up the fight against nicotine and tobacco products.
Well, what a fantastic video and a really good insight then into the situation and the topic that we're discussing today. Now that we have, of course, a general view of this new report, it's time to go much more in depth and see exactly what the new data are saying. So I'm very happy to welcome and also to introduce, of course, Dr. Rüdiger Kresch, the Director of the Health Promotion Department at WHO, followed by a presentation on the results of the report. This is by Dr. Hebe Guda, who's the Project Officer and Coordinator of the report in the No Tobacco Unit at WHO. So from me in London, over to you, Geneva.
Hannah, thank you very much, Hannah, for this introduction, and good day to all those tuning in around the world. It is a pleasure to be here with you today and to have the opportunity to mark the launch of this important report. MPOWER is a package of tools that WHO launched in 2008 to help countries implement the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. MPOWER represents a package of cost-effective interventions that are known and have proven to reduce the demand for tobacco. We are pleased to find that despite the significant challenges countries have faced in the time of this COVID pandemic, progress in tobacco control has persevered. Now, 5.3 billion people are covered by at least one MPOWER measure at the highest level of achievement. Indeed, 4.4 billion people are now covered by at least 2 measures. That is more than half the world's population, living in over half of all countries. In 2007, there was less than 500 million protected to this extent. But these last 18 months have also shown us the extent to which the tobacco and other industries involved in the manufacture of e-cigarettes will go to make a profit. They have attempted to brand themselves as part of the solution and a public health ally, while still marketing and profiting from tobacco across the globe. And e-cigarettes, which are marketed to children and adolescents, threaten to hook a new generation to nicotine. For the first time, this report presents new data on the state of regulation applied to e-cigarettes and other electronic nicotine delivery systems. These products are not only addictive and harmful, but most are modifiable and are difficult to distinguish from some tobacco products, making their regulation a challenge. With the proliferation and rapid evolution of these products on the market, it is crucial that they are regulated so that everyone is protected, including measures to prevent their use amongst current non-smokers, like the children and adolescents they target. Thank you all for being here today, and Dr. Gauda will now present in more detail the results of the new report. Over to you, Hebe.
Thank you, Dr. Gresh. Thank you. And thank you all for joining today to mark the launch of this report. I would like to take a brief moment before I start to thank all the people that have helped to make this launch happen. We started working on this report just before the COVID-19 pandemic changed our world. And importantly, this report is not something that is produced here in Geneva. It requires the commitment and contribution of hundreds of individuals around the world, all of whom have faced challenges of varying degrees over this period of time. So thank you to all of those who have made this report be possible. Now, the product of this hard work, the results. One key finding, of course, you have already heard. Countries have demonstrated their commitment and tenacity in the face of the numerous challenges posed by COVID-19. Today, 75% of the world's population is covered by at least one MPOWER measure at best practice level. Sorry, is the microphone okay? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Slide two, the second slide, please. One key finding you've already heard today, yeah. Okay. So 75% of the world's population is covered by at least one MPOWER measure at best practice level. This steady progress since 2007 represents an incredible, almost five-fold increase. Next slide, please. MPOWER is a package of measures. Sorry, one slide back. That's it, thank you. MPOWER is a package of measures which, if adopted together, will have a bigger impact on the ultimate goal of reducing tobacco use. For this reason, it is particularly encouraging to see that more than half the world, both in terms of population and the number of countries, are now covered by at least two measures at the highest level of achievement. Next slide, please. Some measures, however, are progressing faster than others. Graphic health warnings on tobacco packages have seen the fastest progress of all the measures. And today we can report again that more than half of the world's population and half of the world's countries are covered by these graphic health warnings at best practice level. Some countries are moving to adopt plain packaging, thus removing branding from the packs entirely. In 2019, 2020, 7 additional countries adopted plain packaging, making a total of 17 worldwide. Measures like sufficiently high tobacco taxes and bans on advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, however, are lagging, and we need more countries to commit to these interventions and to push for their introduction into their national laws. Next slide, please. Thank you. So far, I've been talking about measures at best practice level, those that cover all criteria that we consider important for those measures to have the biggest impact on tobacco use. For example, the criteria for smoke-free environments is that smoking is banned in 8 different public facilities like educational institutions, health facilities, and public transport. So where a country has 6 facilities covered by smoke-free laws, they will fall in a grouping here depicted by a lighter shade of blue. For this graph, therefore, one can see that many countries are working towards full adoption of MPOWER measures and just need to strengthen some features of their laws and policies to meet the highest level of achievement. At the same time, however, 49 countries globally have not adopted a single MPOWER measure at this highest level yet. Next slide, please. So moving on to the theme of this report, electronic nicotine delivery systems, many of which are known as e-cigarettes, and I will use the terms interchangeably here. Access to e-cigarettes is rapidly increasing across the globe, and we wanted to see what kinds of measures are currently in place in countries to help regulate them. We looked at most of the MPOWER measures as they would be applied to e-cigarettes, as well as sales bans, restrictions placed on sales to minors, and the regulation of e-cigarette flavors. Next slide, please. We found that out of 195 countries, 111 countries regulate e-cigarettes. 32 of these countries applied sales bans on the products, and 79 adopted to some extent a ban on the use of e-cigarettes either in public areas, a ban on e-cigarette advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, or the adoption of graphic health warnings on e-cigarette packaging. Next, please. We did not have data for all countries where taxation is concerned, but for the 86 we did have data on, 1/3 applied no excise taxes at all to ENDS products. And where taxation was applied, it was generally low. In only three countries, they taxed e-liquids at 75% or more of the retail price. Next, please. While only 29% of countries monitor ENDS use amongst adults, monitoring of ENDS use amongst youth is increasingly common, with almost 45% of countries collecting data on ENDS use in adolescents. Next slide, please. Thank you. For measures that could particularly help protect young people from the uptake of e-cigarettes, we found that only 69 countries apply age restrictions to the sale or purchase of ENDS. Less than half of those that have similar restrictions for tobacco products. And finally, only 9 countries have adopted a form of regulation to control the availability of flavored ENDS on their markets. We know that flavors, like those that are fruity or candy-based, are appealing to young people, but only 3 countries, as of 2020, banned all flavors apart from tobacco flavoring. Our findings reveal the real need for regulation of e-cigarettes and ENDS products in general. 84 countries currently have no regulation in place for these products. While tobacco and related industries like e-cigarette manufacturers claim to be marketing these products to current tobacco users, flavors and other marketing strategies that are aimed at children and adolescents put these young generations at risk of nicotine addiction and of progression to conventional tobacco use. Next slide, please. The global commitment to tobacco control and the adoption of cost-effective measures like those in the MPOWER package have made great progress in reducing tobacco use. Between 2007 and 2019, the prevalence of tobacco use amongst adults has decreased from 23% to 17%. We must stay focused on further reducing tobacco use across the world and protecting those most vulnerable to tobacco industry tactics. Next slide, please. COVID-19 has had a huge impact on health systems globally. Services providing for people suffering from non-communicable diseases have been severely disrupted. Smoking is not only the reason for many chronic conditions, but also makes people more vulnerable to severe COVID-19 outcomes. Tobacco should be deeply embedded in our endeavors to build back to a better future with strong health systems and a healthier world for all. Next slide, please. Thank you. And thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Hebe, and also thank you to Rudiger for that insightful kind of assessment of all of the data as well going into this report. Now we have another video for you now. This is going to give us some examples of how countries have tackled tobacco control over the last 2 years.
Across the world, countries are fighting back against the tobacco industry to protect the health of their people. In the Ukraine, significant increases in tobacco taxes pushed the price of cigarettes up, contributing towards a 20% drop in the number of adult smokers between 2010 and 2017, and a 40% drop in the number of teenage smokers from 2005 to 2017.
У 2006 році за кишенькові гроші підліток міг купити у 4 рази більше сигарет, ніж зараз.
In January 2021, the country started imposing taxes on e-cigarettes. These products are increasingly used by young people who often go on to use tobacco later on. The COVID-19 pandemic has further highlighted the health risks of tobacco use and was part of the rationale behind strengthening tobacco control in Paraguay. In December 2020, in a move to protect people from exposure to the toxins in smoke and emissions, the country passed a decree banning cigarette and e-cigarette smoking everywhere except open-air public spaces. With this regulation in place, South America became the first sub-region in the Americas to become entirely smoke-free. Thailand has also taken steps to protect its population from second-hand smoke, with a mass media campaign warning people about the dangers of using tobacco at home. while smoking is banned in public spaces, many people still smoke at home, exposing around 17.3 million non-smokers, including children, to secondhand smoke. The country's campaign, called Stop Destroying Your Child's Dream, was launched in 2019 and ran across TV, radio, print, online and transit advertising, as well as outdoor billboards. Qatar has run advertisements warning the public about the dangers of smoking. And since 2012, graphic health warnings have been compulsory on the country's cigarette and water pipe tobacco packaging, with picture-based warnings covering 50% of the front and back of each package. In Côte d'Ivoire, campaigns, conferences, TV talk shows and news interviews are being used to raise awareness about a new law imposing a comprehensive ban on tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship, including e-cigarettes.
Cette campagne a pour but d'amener la population à prendre conscience des dangers du tabagisme.
Il faut vraiment interdire toute forme de publicité, que ce soit direct, que ce soit indirect.
A public-private partnership in Malaysia is offering cigarette and e-cigarette users the help they need to quit. Malaysia Quit Smoking Services, or MQuit, was introduced in 2015. Previously, quitting services were only provided at government healthcare facilities, with less than 10,000 smokers registering for help each year. MQuit extended these services to private healthcare facilities and pharmacies, as well as the workplace, more than doubling the number of registrations. With the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, MQuit services were also made available online, and registrations soared from 22,600 in 2019 to more than 28,000 in 2020. If all countries continue the fight to reduce tobacco use, we can shrink the global tobacco epidemic and build a healthier world for everyone.
Another really informative video there, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, so many countries are, of course, working to help save and protect people from tobacco, as we've just been hearing. I want to now talk to some of the people who dedicate their lives to this endeavour, and to some of those that have been impacted by tobacco as well. We have a really exceptional panel of experts, I'm delighted to say. I'm also delighted to say that we're doing really well for time. So where I've told them in the past that they need to be quick, you don't necessarily need to. You've got a bit more time, which is fantastic news. And we're also going to be speaking to not just people who are professionally involved in tobacco control, but also people who have been impacted by tobacco and e-cigarettes. That's perhaps played some kind of role in their personal lives. So first off, let me introduce Roshan Dohari, Dr. Serene Yoon, Georgi Mikaladze, and Dr. Noor Obaidat. Ms. Dohari is a senior public health official at the Mauritius Ministry of Health. Dr. Yoon is an associate professor and behavioural scientist based at Swinburne University in Australia. Mr. Mikaladze is an international lawyer who works at the United Nations in New York and has recently taken part in WHO's Quitter Diaries, which follows 6 people across the world as they commit to quit tobacco. And Dr. Obaidat is a researcher who has dedicated her career to studying behaviour where tobacco is concerned, and to working in cessation as well to help people quit. So welcome to all of you. It's wonderful to see you. Roshan, let me start with you. You've worked in tobacco control in your country, Mauritius, for many, many years. It is a small island country, though, and you've had a huge amount of success. How have you done it?
Thank you so much, Hannah. Hi, everybody. Greetings to all of you from the Republic of Mauritius. First of all, thank you so much, WHO, for the opportunity given to Mauritius to share our experience in the achievements in tobacco control. Well, in fact, the success can be attributed, Hannah, to many factors, but I have tried to get it short for members present today. First of all is our political commitment. I'm happy to tell you that we have political stability, and this is very important for the success of tobacco control. And we have also the unflinching support of the actual Minister of Health and former Ministers of Health as well. They have been very supportive in all our tobacco control initiatives so far. And as well, very important element, the presence of champions in key position. I can tell you that the zeal, enthusiasm, and the leadership qualities of a committed and qualified focal point remains a real champion with innovative ideas to are the main driving force ahead to implement tobacco control policy is very important. And that person as well with the networking at international and national level is very important and extremely important rather to bring forward the tobacco control strategy of the ministry. This is what Mauritius learned from other countries, and we have been putting it into practice through the focal point basically. And what is important as well, Mauritius adopted the technical package to implement tobacco control policies. The MPOWER technical package of WHO has been an invaluable tool for Mauritius, and this has been we have been following very closely all the strategies put forward by WHO through the MPOWER strategies, and this has been transforming to realities in our policies. Before the last implementation of intervention strategies, very important. As party to the WHO, FCTC, and the protocol, we have the mandatory obligations, and we mean it. We have transformed all our obligations so far into reality in our country. And very important to mention, the absence of tobacco manufacturers in our territory has been very important breakthrough for us. And we have been having very strict legislation. We have been having regular increase in tobacco taxation as well. We have a complete ban on taps, and this has been very helpful. Free tobacco cessation services for smokers, and our aggressive sensitization campaign throughout has been very helpful as well. Yeah. Last but not the least, basically the importance of partnership and collaboration, Hannah. Very important to note that we have been collaborating, we have been tapping resources and technical expertise from WHO, HQ, and AFRO, and even NGOs at international level. I have in mind former World Lung Foundation, now Vital Strategies, CTFK, and other partners have helped Mauritius lengthily. Yeah. To finish, my key message, Hannah, if you allow me, the success of tobacco control initiatives rests on the committed efforts and involvement of an dedicated focal point and the unconditional political commitments to achieve the common goals and as well to curb down the scourge of the tobacco epidemic.
It's a really good overview. It's a great overview, Roshan. I just want to ask you very briefly, if you don't mind as well, about the major challenges that you've faced in tobacco control, whether that comes from a policy side or indeed from the public.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Very interesting question. Basically, we have been facing several challenges throughout the years. The first one has been the main challenge that was monitoring the tricks and tactics of the tobacco industry with the ever increasing importers on our territory. We are controlling them, and we are just keeping them at an eye on all their movements. Okay. And as well as securing fundings for implementation of tobacco control policies with our forthcoming new legislation with plain packaging, basically. This is going to be the first in Africa, right? With plain packaging in the next coming month, you will see. And as well, we are aiming towards a new legislation with a coverage of 95% with pictorial health warnings on tobacco products. We will be basically the first in the world. Let's cross finger that this is coming.
I'm going to have to move on because we are going to race through time before we know it. But let's bring in Georgi. Georgi's recently quit smoking. Congratulations to you. How did you do it?
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be able to share my story with you. Hi to everybody. I think that for me, like for many others, COVID was one of the reasons that we started to rethink our health issues. We started to rethink how we approach the whole idea of it. I think I decided that I need to take back my life in many ways. To be a better person, a more healthier person for my family, for my loved ones. Achieving that was not easy task. I will not lie to you. It's almost like required changing a lot of my own character, my lifestyle drastically. But I think I had one objective in mind, knowing that different lifestyle without a tobacco is so much better, so much brighter, and it's amazing to me. And I have substituted certainly some of the habits that were associated with smoking with some other stuff like jogging, biking, cooking, you will be surprised. So there are new things that can come with efficacy of tobacco control.
Right. So what advice then would you give to others who are also trying to quit? I mean, is it all about just replacing cigarette use or tobacco use with a different hobby?
Well, I have to remember this famous phrase by Mark Twain. I think he said that quitting smoking is very easy. I did it thousands of times. So it's a journey. It's a personal journey, and I think that there's no universal recipe for it. And quitting to smoke is a personal choice, and we are all having a shift in our mentality to try to do that. And I think that the most important part is to let everybody know that I don't think that you have to be a superhuman to do that. We're all able to do that, and it's never too late, to get and embark on that journey. And I'm sure that we're all going to be successful. And the most important part is that life without it is safe, guys. So
that's great to hear. That's great to hear, and a great message as well, saying it's never too late, never too late to quit. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are just sort of have been thinking about it, but just delaying it, and then thinking it's just not worth it, perhaps after a while. So it's great to hear that you've done it and that you're cooking. Wonderful to hear, and running as well, I believe as well. Let's move on to Noor, to Dr. Awaidat. Noor, you're a researcher. You've dedicated your career then to studying behaviour where tobacco is concerned. Hearing Georgi's story, that must be quite familiar to you. How do you and other health professionals then support people who want to quit?
So let me just start by making sure that everyone can hear me, because I had an issue with my mic. Great. First of all, Georgi, congratulations, and thank you for having us. We hear this a lot, and I think the most important thing that we consistently do is that we train providers in clinics, hospitals, and even in community settings. We train them to be able to respond to smokers who want to quit, and to be able to be proactive about addressing the issue of their smoking. Not enough smokers are asked about their smoking status, unfortunately, even among physicians, even in hospitals. And it's just not the norm. It's not the norm to ask someone whether or not they smoke, whether or not they're interested in quitting. And unfortunately, we see this a lot in Jordan, that not enough healthcare providers know how to address the potential for quitting. They don't know what to tell patients in terms of, well, there are services out there, you are able to quit smoking with a structured approach. And so what we're doing is we're trying to instill that amongst our healthcare practitioners. And certainly in our hospital, we've gone a step further. We've institutionalized this so that any person who comes into the hospital must be asked about smoking and must be referred to a smoking cessation clinic if they're a smoker up front, even before they start their other treatment.
And what about countries as a whole? Then how can a government support people, support its citizens in trying to quit?
This is interesting.
Oh, we've lost your volume for a second there, Noor. Sorry, we lost you for just 1 second.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
So this is an important question, because we've seen this shift in Jordan with the COVID pandemic. Really, what I would say is the most critical thing is for the government to have a focal point or a focal body that understands the importance of training on tobacco dependence treatment and availing resources needed to provide that kind of treatment. And of course, obviously, we need more mass media campaigns promoting the concept of quitting. And this is one of the biggest steps that any government, any country can do, is just creating that body that can guide others, other institutions, other entities that want to basically start integrating smoking cessation services in their environments.
Okay, great advice there, and really fascinating stuff. Now, I want to bring in Serene Jung, Dr. Jung. Serene, it's widely claimed, or at least some claim, that e-cigarettes actually help people transition then away from smoking tobacco, and it sort of assists the quitting process. But I understand that you've got some evidence that actually shows that e-cigarettes are being taken up by new smokers.
So the questions that we've looked at are whether non-smoking children and adolescents who use e-cigarette may increase the risk of taking up cigarette later on. And we've undertaken a review specifically to explore this question. And the reason we undertake reviews is that it can, oh, sorry, I'm just getting a lot of feedback in my ear.
Sorry, we can hear you clearly if you're not too distracted by the feedback.
Great, thanks for that. So the reason we undertook a review is that we really wanted to consider the global evidence, and review processes can help, I guess, overcome spurious findings and kind of statistical imprecision. And what we found when we looked at the evidence was that there was consistent evidence that showed that children and adolescents who did not smoke and used e-cigarettes were more likely to use cigarettes at follow-up, and that association stayed constant, controlling for a range of other factors. And so we know that the evidence is building and really suggesting that there's a strong link there.
So is the evidence pointing to the fact that e-cigarettes are actually a gateway then to tobacco use?
That's a very sensitive question to ask a researcher, I think.
I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, so while a lot of the studies didn't explore that specifically, I would say there's from how we can explore it, right? It's looking from high quality prospective observational studies that have controlled for as many factors as people can control for, have quite strongly established that there's a link between using it at one point and taking up cigarettes at another point, however you want to use that information.
Okay, well, slightly cryptic then, the messaging from you, but I think we get the point. Well, we do actually have, I'm delighted to say, some youth advocates and some young people as well who would like to, I'd like to welcome to join this conversation as well and reflect on some of your own personal experiences. We've got Caleb Mintz, Jasmine Hicks and Han Win with us. My thanks to the speakers who are on screen at the moment, and hopefully you'll stay with us through to the end of this particular event. But let's bring in our youth advocates then. And Caleb, if I can start with you. I understand that you have a story that shows that the tobacco industry has personally sort of targeted you and your friends as well. If you want to just unmute yourself and then do tell us more about how you've been impacted and your experience.
Well, thank you for having me. When I was in 9th grade, around 3 years ago, a speaker came to my high school under the guise of a mental health seminar. And that speaker turned out to be a representative for the Juul Corporation, which is one of the largest vaping conglomerates. And the speaker proceeded to send mixed messages about the safety of the devices, saying, quote, "It is the safest product on the market. It is, quote, 99% safer than combustible cigarettes, but we don't want you as customers." Clearly, when you tell teenagers not to do something, there's a good chance they will do it. And unfortunately, my school was not an isolated incident, as these big tobacco 2.0 companies continue to prey on the vulnerable youth under the guise of preventing the use of their products. As a result of the presentation, many of my peers began to question whether the products once seen as dangerous were even harmful at all, with some of my closest friends now believing their habits were justified due to a trusted adult telling them that it was safe. Thank you.
Caleb, did you ever take up smoking or try any e-cigarettes as a result of that presentation, and that because of peer pressure perhaps from your own friends?
So I certainly, in my time in high school, with vaping being so prevalent, I cannot say that I've never used it. And I think that there should be no shame associated with using any of these products because they're just so prevalent in high schools. But yeah, a lot of my peers use these products. I've experimented with these products, and yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And it's so interesting to see that, that they were sort of saying, we're not targeting you. We don't want you to be a customer. But ultimately, as you said, if you tell a teenager, don't do something, there's every incentive then to kind of go and do it as well. So Caleb, thanks very much indeed. Let's bring in Jasmine Hicks. Jasmine, you're the Director of Youth Leadership Development at the Truth Initiative. What are some of the things that we can do to stop young people taking up smoking and stop the tobacco industry targeting young people?
Yeah, again, thank you so much. And Caleb, thank you. Working directly with young people, I'm so proud of you for sharing your story. And that's one of the things that we're working with young people to do, to share their stories, right? Tell us how you've been targeted, so other young people and your peers can be aware and not be targeted. So we have a lot of leadership programs that bring awareness to the targeting practices of Juul and other big tobacco. And so we're constantly just pushing young people to be aware and bring education on their campuses and their communities to make changes. And so we're trying to regulate big tobacco on a federal level, whether that's menthol and flavors, or just making sure that manufacturers are submitting pre-market applications to get approved by the FDA. So we're constantly just bringing a lot of awareness. We're trying to teach young people about quitting resources. We have a program called This Is Quitting, which is text-based that young people can text in, and they're constantly getting reminders about, and just encouraging them to quit vaping and bringing the facts about e-cigarettes. So we really just value our young people's voices in these spaces. Like Caleb, we teach them how to share their story. And that's a lot of what we do. So we continue to encourage young people to bring forth their stories. Can't hear you, Hannah.
Someone just muted me. It's the powers that be. Jasmine, I was just saying, it sounds fascinating and fantastic as well that you're really trying to empower young people to sort of advocate for themselves in this. Is that the premise of everything that you're trying to do, or is it more of an emphasis on trying to tackle the industry at large?
It's both. It's definitely twofold. We are often mobilizing youth. So like even 2 years ago, we brought a lot of young people to Washington, D.C., and we had them rally outside of Juul's D.C. office. And so they were sharing their stories, just like Caleb, and telling how they've been targeted. But we brought them up to Capitol Hill where they could speak to their decision makers and stakeholders, and also share the facts about, how big tobacco has targeted them, and just share their story. So we've been pushing for federal regulation. So it's really a two-pronged approach for us, but really educating youth about this epidemic is where we find our power.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I want to bring in now Han Nguyen. Han, you're a tobacco advocate from Vietnam, and you're working with an international network of youth advocates as well. Tell us a little bit about your work to start off with, and then perhaps we can dive a bit more into what you're doing in the same vein as Jasmine has said to empower young people.
Yeah. Hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. I'm from Vietnam NCD Prevention Alliance, and my organization and other partner has conduct activity to empower the youth to fight against the tobacco industry, especially with the new products, e-cigarette. First of all, we organize the communication campaign to raise the awareness of young people about the harms of e-cigarette, and also the tobacco tactics, expose the tobacco industry tactic aiming to children and teenagers. We also organize the media competition for young people to find the best writing, the poster or the infographic on the tobacco control. We think this is the great way to encourage the young people to contribute their creativity in tobacco control program. They can also widely share the meaningful message to stop the tobacco through the contest and challenge. Secondly, we encourage young people to work with CSO or WHO to send the message to the government to strengthen the tobacco control policy, such as the ban of e-cigarette, the strict control of tobacco advertisement, or the taxation reform. And last but not least, we create the opportunity for young people to participate and voice up in the national or the global health policy, such as the NCD Global Forum, Global NCD Forum, or World Tobacco or Health Conference. I hope that in the future, young people can attend the NCD high-level meeting on NCD in the near future. Yeah, and I hope that this action can have the young people to be a key part in advocate the country around the world to fighting against the tobacco epidemic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Han. And the question really for all of our young people and youth advocates as well. And Han, let me come straight to you actually on this one. I'm just curious, is smoking, whether it's tobacco, cigarettes, or whether it's e-cigarettes, is it still seen amongst many young people as being cool? And if it is that the fault of the industry for making it seem cool still?
Yeah. Yes, I think that the young people is easy to attracted by the flash-sitting or trendy thing like e-cigarette, and this is the thing that tobacco industry use to appear new generation of customer, the new customer to sustain their profit. So they promote a lot in social media. So we will use the social media to have activity to against the tobacco industry. A strong message again.
That's really interesting that social media is being used as a marketing tool then as well to still try and reach young people. Caleb, what do you think to that question? I mean, is it still considered? I mean, I'm not saying it ever has been cool or ever is cool, but I mean, certainly when I was younger, and I'm way past that stage now, but it was something that there was a lot of peer pressure, and the industry kind of made it seem like something, it was a sort of a coming of age thing, like to take up smoking. Is that still the case?
So I think that with cigarettes, I don't think that's the case. I think the fact that they're combustible and there's ash left from them, I think it's people don't find that cool anymore. I think people are actually kind of revolted by them now, or at least teens are. The problem is that these vaping devices are not combustible. They are not. They don't have ash, and they are very sleek. They're modern, and they're very new age products, which in no way look like they're dangerous at all. And I think that over time they have become like a status symbol. And as kids get older, unfortunately, they are starting to use them. And
Jasmine,
like a coming of age.
Jasmine, just final word to you on that then.
Yeah, totally agree with Caleb. Like the design is very sleek. If you look at some of the labeling with the flavors, like they look cool because they're able to slip them in their sleeve and use them discreetly. So I think that they're definitely still a cool thing, but it's very, very important for us to get the right education. Like in 2018, 63% of Juul users didn't know that there was actually nicotine in them. And a lot of our young people who start to use them for the first time don't know that there's nicotine in them. So it's important to educate them about the actual harms of these products.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your insights, all of you. And these new products, especially e-cigarettes, provoke many conflicting and strong discussions around the world. So thank you to everyone for sharing your experience and knowledge with us today. I now have time just before we get to the close of the hour to introduce a very special guest to join us. It's my honor to welcome the world-renowned marathon runner, Paula Radcliffe. Paula, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being with us today. I wonder if we can just start off by reacting perhaps to what we've just heard from young people being exposed to and impacted by the tobacco industry, essentially, whether it's e-cigarettes or tobacco. And as a mum, as a human, how do you feel about that?
I think it really hits home hard. As you said, as a mum, what we want is for our children and their peers to be healthy and to grow up healthy, and to have access to basic human right of breathing in healthy, clean air and getting stronger and healthier than perhaps we were. And that trend is maybe being reversed now. And I think what hits home there is the fact that young children today do not respond to the same warnings that we did, because it needs to come in a different manner. It needs to come via social media. A lot of kids and teenagers now don't even read the warnings on packs. They don't read packs. They just take it out because they've seen it on social media. It's cool and they know what it's going to do and they're fine with it. So they don't read instructions. And I think we need to change maybe the messaging to hit children there, and to really make sure that message that e-cigarettes are not harmless, they do still carry dangers, and to be able to educate the youngsters about that will make a lot of parents sleep easier.
And I assume, as a long distance runner, that you haven't smoked yourself through your life, but have you been exposed to cigarette smoke or nicotine, tobacco in some form throughout your life?
Yeah, well, affected by it more, I think.
Okay.
So my mum actually, right back in the 70s, forced my dad to give up smoking before I was born, which may or may not have contributed to the fact when I was conceived and during pregnancy, I later developed asthma when I was about 13, 14, and still am asthmatic to this day. And one of my biggest triggers is cigarette smoke. So a huge benefit for me when things like smoking on planes was banned in indoor spaces, particularly in indoor sports arenas. That was a huge benefit for me and continues to be a big trigger. Even if I go into a room with stale smoke, I will still be affected. So yeah, I'm really keen that my kids go nowhere near it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, and aside from a athletics point of view, aside from the need to presumably have clean air and healthy lungs in order to compete at the highest level, you're really passionate about just clean air in general. Does that come from your experience with asthma, or does it come from your experience with your professional sport?
I think it comes from that wider experience of just being outside, of loving the outdoors and appreciating the outdoors. I do feel that when I'm outdoors running for an hour or two, you really gain a sense of perspective. This is an amazing, beautiful world. And I want my kids, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to be able to still enjoy that. So that's primarily why I'm an advocate for clean air. Because trying to push kids and people in general just to get out, enjoy that outdoors, be physically active, and benefit from everything that being physically active brings as a benefit. But if I'm trying to encourage them to do that and the air is not clean outside, then that's a risk. I don't want to be encouraging people to actually do something that's detrimental to their health.
And what about aspiring sports people as well? I mean, in the face of this onslaught from a very powerful industry, what advice would you give to an aspiring athlete?
Well, I think as an aspiring athlete, as anybody, your body is an amazing tool, and our bodies enable us to do so much and to achieve so much. But we have to look after them. We have to look after the fuel that we put into them, and we have to be careful about the atmosphere around them, getting enough sleep, enough rest, and avoiding things which will damage our bodies and give them just another stress to deal with. There are enough stresses around in this world which are unavoidable. I think tobacco is really one that is avoidable. So trying to support your body, it can then go on to achieve all of those three things that you dream about and you aim towards. So set those goals, but just make sure you respect your body and the world by what you put into it and how you live your life.
And just for ordinary, not necessarily aspiring athletes, but just people who like to perhaps go for a run or try and keep fit, there does seem to be some anecdotal link, at least, between quitting smoking and taking up running. I think Georgi even said that aside from cooking, he's also pounding the pavements as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I know a lot of people who've quit and have then maybe they've eaten a little bit more, they've put on a bit more weight, because nicotine is an appetite suppressant, and a healthier way to control that is to get out and run. And I think also the endorphin rush that you get from running, from probably any sport, but I get mine hugely from running, is probably very similar, but a lot more healthy, or a lot healthier than the nicotine rush that we can get there. So yes, being able to turn to physical activity, and remember that the negative effects of tobacco are largely reversible. And the quickest way to reverse those is to essentially flush your lungs out. So the more air you're putting in, the more toxins you're flushing out.
Paula, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a thrill to speak to you. And thank you to all of our panelists as well. Please, all of you, keep on working hard, running, researching, advocating as well as you've done today. All of this is clearly so much needed. My thanks to everyone. Now, as we near the end of our discussion, I would like to also thank all of not just today's speakers, but also the participants as well for all of your time and insights. Tobacco is a huge burden to global health, killing 8 million people a year. But with the unwavering dedication of advocates like those that we've met today as well, and the commitment of countries to tobacco control, a tobacco-free future really could be on the cards. Thank you to the World Health Organization, to Bloomberg Philanthropies and partners. I'd also like to extend a very warm thank you to our audience for your participation. I'm afraid we don't have time for a specific Q&A, but as I said, the questions will be read by the team, and hopefully you will be responded to in due course. And my name's Hannah Vaughan-Jones. It's been a real pleasure to be involved in all of this. Thank you so much for joining us. And I leave you today with a message from the Indian Olympian Pusala Bisindhu, who's currently in Tokyo.
Tobacco use not only harms our health but also is a threat
Very shortly, we'll be going to this video.
To the health of our family and friends. Additionally, tobacco users have a greater risk of developing severe cases of COVID-19. So I want everyone to break free from the dependence on tobacco and stay healthy. I want everybody to pledge and become tobacco free. Commit to quit.